It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
Vigilant, do as I did, reject the claim, and perhaps we should all form a group and get together and fight it together.
a convicted Islamist is suing a pub called the Sarahson's Head, saying that he finds its name offensive.
If there are elections taking place to a council that it essentially won't exist within the term of those elections, then you hold off the elections.
Well, is it Labour that's a danger to democracy? They're suspending some local elections for around 2 years. What are they scared of? Well,
that man is not allowed in my pub. Get out of my pub. Go on. Get out of my pub.
oh, Starmer's got the lowest approval rating of any PM in modern history. Maybe that's got something to do with it. Also, the OnlyFans model who attacked Nigel Farage avoids jail. But the people who did similar stuff to both Corbyn and Miliband were sent to prison. So why were they treated differently? Plus,
unless institutions are safe places for children, families and vulnerable adults, the things that we long for, all of us, and believe in will not come to pass.
well, the man filling in for Welby, you just saw him on your screen there, the Archbishop of York, is told to resign as well over another sex abuse case. In other news,
did you know what Islamic State were doing when you left for Syria? Because they had beheaded people, there were executions.
Yeah, I knew about those things and I was okay with it.
I was okay with it, just a beheading or two. Labour have refused to rule out letting Shamima Begum back to Britain. Ridiculous. And it turns out that this was fake news.
He clutches my arm tightly with both hands. Does anyone have any water?
That poor victim turned out to reportedly be a torturer for the Assad regime. On my panel tonight, it's columnist Carol Malone, we've got journalist Benjamin Butterworth and associate editor at the Daily Express, Sam Lister. Oh, and what the heck is going on here? Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Are we living under a Keir Starmer dictatorship? Next.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines. It's just gone 9 o'clock. The alleged Chinese spy linked to Prince Andrew has said he did nothing wrong or unlawful after he was publicly named for the first time. The High Court lifted a ban on naming Yang Tengbo, described as a close contact of the Duke, after rejecting his bid for anonymity. The 50-year-old, who was banned from Britain on national security grounds, ran a lobbying firm with ties to Beijing, Westminster and royal circles. Yang reportedly attended the Duke's birthday party in 2020 and helped organise a UK-China business summit. Pressure to reveal his identity mounted after Reform UK's Nigel Farage vowed to name him in Parliament. Meanwhile, the Duke of York will not join the royal family for Christmas at Sandringham. That's according to sources. It's understood both Prince Andrew and his ex-wife, the Duchess of York, have decided to avoid the annual family gathering amid the ongoing scandal over the Duke's close links to the alleged spy. Police in the US say at least 3 people are dead and 6 are injured after a shooting at a school in Wisconsin. The shooting occurred at Abundant Life Christian School in the state capital of Madison. Authorities say children were among the dead, while police believe the suspected juvenile shooter was a student at the school. Residents have been asked to avoid the area and roads are closed near the school. In other news, killer nurse Lucy Letby's legal team has said they'll be asking the Court of Appeal to immediately review all of her convictions because an expert witness has now changed his mind on the cause of death of 3 babies. Her new lawyer, Mark MacDonald, said Dr. Dewey Evans had told the jury Letby had injected air down a nasal gastric tube, leading to the death of the 3 babies. But he said Dr. Evans has now changed his mind. Letby is serving 15 whole life terms in prison for the murder of 7 babies and the attempted murder of 7 others while working at the Countess of Chester Hospital in 2015 and 2016. And Bashar al-Assad insists he never considered fleeing as rebels stormed Damascus, marking his first reported statement since the city fell 8 days ago. Shared on the Syrian presidency's Telegram, Assad claims he went to a Russian base to oversee combat, only to find Syrian troops had deserted and the base under drone attack. He says Russian forces airlifted him to Moscow, but denies any plans to step down, calling his role meaningless if the state falls to terrorism. Rebel groups led by Tahir al-Sham are forming a transitional government, though their jihadist past raises doubts about promises of tolerance. Meanwhile, earlier today, the Foreign Secretary David Lammy confirmed the UK has sent a team of officials to Damascus for talks on the future of Syria. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. Are we living in a Keir Starmer dictatorship? Rumours were swirling that Labour was going to cancel the local elections in England.
Why aren't they all going ahead?
And I would say, even before the white paper has been published,
maybe there's a problem with the line. Why aren't they going ahead, Minister?
Well, at the moment, the assumption is that elections are going ahead. However, it's usual in a process of reorganisation that when a council makes a request for reorganisation, that if there are elections taking place to a council that it essentially won't exist within the term of those elections, then you hold off the elections and you elect to a shadow body, and the shadow body basically is a form of the new councils that will follow.
And now we appear to have confirmation on this. Some local elections due to take place in May next year might now be delayed until 2027. Labour says that they want to postpone them because they're restructuring the councils. Some might not exist in a couple of years' time. But this excuse doesn't really wash. So these local elections were seen as a referendum on Keir Starmer's government. He's currently the most unpopular Prime Minister of modern times with an approval rating of somewhere in the region of -61. And this graph actually shows just how quickly his popularity has nosedived. He is sinking like the Titanic, and Labour are fearful of a monumental kicking in May. Angela Rayner has tried to spin this. She says this is all part of devolution and she's giving power back to the communities. Well, Reform MP Rupert Lowe struck back, stating the bleeding obvious. You don't give power back to communities by cancelling elections, Angela. This is unbelievably rich coming from Labour. Over the weekend, Labour's very own Baroness Harriet Harman was all over the media saying that Nigel Farage and Reform were a threat to democracy.
Well, I think people should be very concerned about Reform because they're not just a threat to individual parties, but I actually think they're a threat to democracy because they are offering easy answers.
And now they are set to, apparently, cancel local elections in Essex, Hertfordshire, Kent, Lancashire and Sussex. The cynic in me would say this: Labour are tanking. Starmer's handling of the summer disorder, his freezing of pensioners, crippling of farmers, relentless desire to give your money, taxpayers' money, away abroad, which included another 50 million quid to Syria yesterday, the Lord Ali Sleaze and Donagate fiasco, Ed Miliband's big green revolution, and, frankly, his total lack of personality mean that he's currently in the toilet. Meanwhile, Reform UK are surging. They're up 7 points since the general election. I mean, they actually have done rather well, haven't they? This will terrify the Labour government. Now, remember when Keir Starmer said this.
It's right that Parliament has the first say. It's right that Parliament has the first say. But if we need to break the impasse, our options must include campaigning for a public vote, and nobody is ruling out Remain as an option.
Yep, that's him there talking about a second Brexit referendum. The Prime Minister has a track record of not liking it when the public, or the great unwashed, as he may refer to them, vote the wrong way. cancelling the local elections could be his attempt to make sure they don't even get a chance to vote at all. Is he behaving like a proper Prime Minister or a tin pot dictator? Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. We, of course, have the wonderful journalist and broadcaster Carol Malone. We've got commentator and writer Benjamin Butterworth and the associate editor at the Daily Express, Sam Lister. Carol, is he behaving a bit like a dictator?
Oh, my God, yeah. This is what happens in dictatorships. He's acting like, you know, a third world dictator. It's incredible because dictators are very strong people, you know, and he's not at all. You know, he literally can't... Reform, as you said, are surging ahead. You know, Reform now has 100,000 members in this country. The Labour Party has 366,000, so that gives you an idea of how much the support is surging for him. And I think, you know, Harriet Harman at the weekend, I mean, that is... pot calling the kettle black here. She said reform is a threat to democracy. What the Labour Party do now is a huge threat to democracy. And interesting, a couple of days before that, Harman had been on another show and she had praised reform and said they were surging ahead and were actually a danger to Labour. And that is absolutely true. And Labour have seen this. They know what's happening. They, you know, the Reform Party is what happens in a country where the ruling party is not listening to the needs and the wants of the electorate. And you pointed out the most unpopular Prime Minister in modern historic times. So, yes, I think, you know, when you have a government, this is a dangerous government, and when you have a government that actually can't rule the country but is going to stop the people who can, we shouldn't be having it.
Benjamin, Keir Starmer's getting the kind of spanking you normally have to pay for in Soho, and he doesn't like it. That's why he's trying to avoid an election.
Yeah, I think people that have come to these conclusions have been on the Christmas sherry early. You know, the idea that it's like a dictator... I don't remember Putin cancelling a few district council elections.
If Putin did this... Sorry,
what a load of
guff. But it's interesting, because I nearly put a line in my monologue, actually, about this. If Putin did this... they'd be all over it like a rash. But it's actually Keir Starmer doing it.
This is actually called gerrymandering. This is what we used to call gerrymandering, where you manipulate boundaries to get the vote you want.
Well, the last Tory government know about that because they tried to cut the number of MPs to make it impossible for a Labour government to get in. But, I mean, this is just total nonsense. You know, what you've got here is, 5 district councils being redrawn in 5 areas of the country so that you can save £2 billion of public money. Now, it's the case that whenever you redraw local authority boundaries, you might have to delay the elections. That is just how it works. That's how it works, whoever does it.
The Tories said they refused to do that.
You know, the idea that people, ordinary people, as politicians like to speak of, are going to be writing to Santa begging for Thurrock District Council to be saved. I tell you what, look at what the turnout was. It was about 25% of people even bothered to vote in the last elections. The idea that a couple of people moaning should mean that we spend £2 billion more on local authorities is everything that's wrong with this country.
I see you're itching to get involved in.
Well, I mean, if we reverse this and say Nigel Farage was Prime Minister and he was delaying this, do you think the left would respond quite so positively as they are doing now? These areas, Essex and Kent, are key areas, Lancashire, the key areas where reform is expected to do well. And it's no surprise that Labour has conveniently found a way of shoving this down the track 2 years. Now, if we to be charitable and take them at face value, and this is just a reorganisation, there's nothing anti-democratic about it. Essentially, what you're saying, if local councils are important, then why would you delay people's say on it? In 2 years' time, a council can go bankrupt. You know, if you look at places like Croydon, people having their council tax put up by... Croydon Council has gone bankrupt 3 times. People are having to pay 15% extra on their council tax bills because of how it's being run. So we have to have the right to kick these people out.
And in Windsor and Maidenhead, they're looking at putting the councils at 25%. Do the public there get to say, hang on a minute, I want to defer that to you?
We'll wait 2 years,
And this does not serve local people, because some of these authorities, when they merge, would be 500,000 plus people. You know, when the councils can't serve 200,000 people, they sure as hell aren't going to be able to serve 500,000 very well.
Yeah, exactly. Look, if Keir Starmer was not a personal approval rating of -61, if he was flying high at the minute, there's no way he'd be cancelling these elections. Is Nigel Farage not right when he says this is a bit dodgy?
No, I'm old enough to remember when Nigel Farage said that he wanted fewer politicians and fewer or less layers of government, right? But now there's no bandwagon he won't jump on to get a cheap and easy headline. That's all you're seeing here. The idea of restructuring a couple of local authorities where we know that most people don't know the difference in what they go to with their problems between district and county councils. These things are a mess.
Why not have a vote at all? Why not have a vote at all if nobody cares. You know,
they don't know what they're voting for anyway. Is this not just classic left-wing?
Your arguments, you would never change it. Right? You would never...
Do you think more people will vote once it's been restructured? I mean, I think...
Yeah, we see that because directly elected mayors tend to get better turnout than local councils.
But the problem is for the directly elected mayors in rural parts of the country, how on earth is somebody in one part of East Anglia supposed to expect the representation that they're going to get in the opposite part of East Anglia? These are big areas of the country, you know.
And it's
crazy.
No coincidence that the polls have predicted that Reform are going to win seats in these local elections, in the mayoral elections, and lots of seats in Scotland. So they're doing it just like I've heard that.
These elections were going to be branded as a referendum on Keir Starmer's performance so far. And frankly, it's been woeful. And that's not a controversial thing to say. Look at the polls, look at the catalogue of things that he's done. They were probably going to get a kicking now. And you're right to mention some of those areas. We're doing a segment shortly, actually, on... It's turned out, there's been some research, that 40% of jobs in the Red Wall are apparently taken by migrant workers. Well... who do you think the Red Wall might be inclined to vote for now? Potentially Reform. Where's Lancashire? The Red Wall. Obviously, people in Essex, I imagine, aren't particularly chuffed about that kind of thing. Suffolk, big farming area. So the list goes on, doesn't it? And this is a problem for Labour. They can't let it happen. They can't let a vote happen.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm to be completely charitable to Labour, I don't think they've gone about reorganising local government to manipulate the local council elections. But what they have seen is an opportunity here to allow this to be delayed by up to 2 years. They could say very clearly that actually, no, democracy is important, people's right to vote is important, we will go ahead, come what may. It doesn't matter if you reorganise. But we've all been writing the stories about how Reform have got the momentum. They are ruthlessly organised now in a way that they've never been before. They were expecting to have the momentum in May, and that's important because Keir Starmer is going to expected to get a drubbing. And if you lose momentum in politics, that is really, really very serious.
It's terrifying, Labour, that Nick Candy is now taking on the job of Treasurer. He's going to get them 40 million quid. He's promised to make Farage Prime Minister. They must be, I was nearly said a bad word there, they must be quaking in their boots.
Look, I'm just glad that all these Reform cheerleaders have suddenly discovered the value of a ballot box, because 2 weeks ago they were all saying that signing an online petition should decide who runs the country and not the 30 million people that voted in July.
Do you know what really upsets me? That Angela Rayner is the housing minister and she's responsible for all this. I mean, you know, the woman is not a bright woman, and yet we're allowing her to tear this country up. And she's, and you know...
Well, Angela Rayner is not here to defend herself.
Well, it doesn't matter.
She would probably say that she is indeed a bright woman.
Well, she's not. She left school at 16 with nothing.
Well, OK,
so she's
all right. Okay.
Good for her.
The only thing I will... I'm not exactly an Angela Rayner cheerleader, and in fact, I am a cheerleader of you, to be fair. The only thing I will say is I think Lord Sugar left school at 16.
He did, yeah.
So
but he has proved himself. Angela Rayner has not.
A point well made. Now, I've got a lot more coming your way, including a convicted jihadi is apparently desperate to try to sue pubs because the name of those pubs offends him. But before all of that, it's time now for our biggest and greatest Great British giveaway. It's the biggest one we've done this year. It's your chance to win £50,000 in tax-free cash. Here's how all of that money could be yours.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck, everybody. Still to come, the Church of England has been plunged into a fresh crisis tonight after the Archbishop, set to take over from Justin Welby, was accused himself of covering up child abuse. So is the Church's reputation totally irretrievable? Former chaplain to the late Queen, Dr Gavin Ashenden, joins me very soon. But first, do you remember this? The OnlyFans model who chucked a milkshake over Nigel Farage was spared jail today and handed a suspended sentence instead. But somehow, a man who sent Ed Miliband death threats gets a 3-year jail sentence. There was also someone who did something to Corbyn as well. They found themselves behind bars. So is this yet more evidence of two-tier justice, do we think? Going head-to-head on that next are the human rights lawyer David Haig and the journalist and author Rebecca Reid. Don't move.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Jaguar has ditched its growling big cat logo as part of what can only be described as a woke rebrand. The badge that has been used for decades, look at it, beautiful, on the bonnets of luxury cars has been swapped for a curved geometric J badge. They've also released a brand new advert, look at it, for their rebrand, which prompted Elon Musk to ask if the company actually sold cars. I thought this was a wind-up. It's not. It's true. And joining me now to discuss this is the motoring journalist Amanda Stratton. Amanda, what on earth is going on at Jaguar? The car of James Bond, Batman, Arthur Daley has gone off the scale woke. Please make me make sense of it.
The E-Type is an absolutely iconic car, and it's important that people remember that, in fact, in its heyday, Jaguar was an incredibly prestigious brand, more so really than other British brands like Aston Martin, for example. But, you know, people in the industry are left sort of scratching their heads because you need to do something bold, you need to do something that catches people's attention, but you also need to stay true to who you are and what you are, and I'm not sure that this is it.
Amanda, that could be an advert for anything. It could be cat food. It could be Karl Lagerfeld. It could be literally anything apart from a Jag. Well, I mean, honestly, I mean, OK, we're talking about it. So we are talking about it, but we're not talking about it for the right reasons, are we?
And I think if I was going to be speculative here, I would like to think that this is actually all part of a cunning plan to get everybody talking about it. Yeah. So when they do launch the first new car that we're going to see, which, you know, people have been waiting, as I say, since 2001.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys. Tonight we are only on GB News. Now coming up, I've got this extraordinary story about this jihadi convicted who wants to sue a pub because the name of that pub offends him. Well, you know, there's plenty of things that offend us all, aren't there? But anyway, first though, should the OnlyFans model who threw a milkshake over Nigel Farage have been given jail time? It's time now for the head-to-head. Yeah, the detail on this story is quite extraordinary, actually. The OnlyFans model who threw a milkshake over the Reform UK leader Nigel Farage during the election campaign has avoided jail. Victoria Thomas-Bowen launched the drink at the MP, the now MP, outside a pub in Clacton-on-Sea on June the 4th. was today sentenced to 13 weeks in prison, suspended for 12 months. That's despite initially pleading not guilty back in October before subsequently changing her plea to guilty. And that comes after a man who threatened to kill the Energy Secretary Ed Miliband was jailed for 3 years back in August, and a 34-year-old businessman was jailed for a year after sending the former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn and the former Speaker John Bercow death threats. So reacting to the suspended sentence on social media today, Nigel Farage said, "We now live in a country where you can assault a member of Parliament and not go to prison. It's the latest example of two-tier justice." So tonight I'm asking, should that OnlyFans model who chucked a milkshake over Farage have been sent to jail? Go to gbnews.com/your say to have your say, or you can, of course, tweet us at GBNews. I'm joined now by human rights lawyer David Haig. David, I believe we are about to be joined as well by Rebecca Reid shortly. But firstly, I'll start with you, David. So, David, do you think that this is an example of two-tier justice? I mean, there are people who've done similar-ish things to MPs who have gone down for it.
Hi, good evening, Patrick. I think it's not just two-tier justice we're seeing. We're seeing a gulf in justice. We're seeing a multi-tier justice system. And I think one of the things that we have to have consistency in sentencing. And that's obviously the job of the judge or the magistrate when they look at a particular case to go through all of that. And I think in this circumstance, when quite rightly you've actually pointed out some cases where there doesn't appear to be any consistency in sentencing. When a politician or a member of the public have been attacked, then things have been done very differently. And I think that's one of the issues that we've got here. Now, it's not an issue of someone just throwing a glass of wine over a friend in a pub. This is a premeditated attack on someone seeking public office. And as you mentioned, there was a case, I think, in 2019 when someone attacked Jeremy Corbyn. And the magistrates in that case actually said it was an attack on democracy. Why is this different?
Well, it's the precedent that it sets, isn't it? Now, if you were to just hold these two things up side by side, and OK, life isn't always as black and white as this, David, but if you were to hold these two things up side by side, you could look at some attacks or threats of attacks on left-wing politicians, and you could look at a physical attack on a right-wing politician, and you could see that if you attack the left, you get sent to prison. If you attack the right, you get to walk free, despite initially pleading not guilty.
Well, absolutely. One of the other things that you're seeing as well, you're seeing essentially people, from a free speech perspective, they're hurling abuses, if you like, on social media, and they're being jailed, yet people actually hurling missiles at people. It might only have been a milkshake, but they could have, if the straw had hit Nigel's eye, for instance, something like that, it could have been dangerous. It could have been something much worse. They're not being sent to jail. So it shows you that there really isn't any consistency in that. And of course, like I said, judges and magistrates on the day will look at various factors when it comes to sentencing, but certainly on the face of it, there appears to be a great gulf here.
OK, right, so we've heard quite a lot there from David, and thank you very much, David. I believe that we can now introduce Rebecca Reid, friend of the show, journalist, author as well. Rebecca, great to have you on the show. Thank you very, very much. Look, David's obviously of the view that she should have been sent to prison and that this is really an element of two-tier justice. Why do you think it's not, and why do you think she's right to have avoided jail?
The really convenient thing with a legal situation is if something basically identical has happened previously, you can kind of look to that for a guide. And Nigel Farage, been milkshaked before. I'm not condoning it, but it has happened. And the man who milkshaked him previously had to pay £350 of damages because he damaged a microphone that he was wearing, so it's criminal damage. And that was the extent of it. So that would feel like a very good guide to how you would deal with somebody who milkshakes Nigel Farage, because it's exactly what happened to somebody who milkshaked Nigel Farage.
OK, I'll sit with you, Rebecca, just for now, because we heard a bit from David there. Is it not about what precedent this sets, though? I mean, you can argue that times have changed a little bit, can't they? And, throwing a milkshake over somebody at the moment could be deemed to be quite threatening. I mean, this might suggest that it's OK to... If anyone doesn't really mind now paying whatever kind of punishment you would get financially, if anyone doesn't really mind getting a suspended sentence, which, with respect, if your career is OnlyFans, it doesn't really matter if you've got a criminal record. It's not the most linear career, shall we say. Then you can just do it. You can now just attack Nigel Farage.
I'm not sure. It's weird. The focus on the OnlyFans thing has been really extensive, particularly in the papers. And I don't know why it's quite so relevant. It feels a little bit like it's being used to cast aspersions about her character. But in terms of suspended sentences, again, if you look at the list of people who have thrown things at politicians, so whether it's the guy who threw an egg at John Prescott, the guy who threw glitter on Keir Starmer, all of these people, it raises a question about what kind of security MPs have. And I definitely think that we should be thinking, why is it so easy for someone to get close to an MP and do this? But fundamentally, if somebody is not injured and no significant property is damaged, it doesn't feel a great use of resources for somebody to be in prison. And ultimately, the law is the law. If you haven't hurt somebody and you haven't broken anything, it's quite hard to send someone to prison for it.
OK, David, I'll let you come back to that because, you know, we have actually seen people get sent down for, amongst other things, some of them were social media posts as well. But I would like you to, as in your experience, really, is the legal profession skewed to the left? Is there even the remotest possibility here that there was some political involvement in being quite lenient with this girl?
I think there could quite possibly be, Patrick. And one of the things that we'll never actually know when it comes to, for instance, judges, is, believe it or not, I think I've mentioned it before, judges in this country are not required to fill in a register of interests. So we will never know what political leaning they are or whatever it is they may have a they're not. Nigel's required to do that, but judges are not. So we would never know if they have a political reading because they're deemed as above all of that. I understand what Rebecca said, but I'm sure Rebecca and I say many things and write many things that people don't like. I don't want to be walking down the street every day and having someone throw things at me, and there's nothing I can do. And I think that's the thing. This is a bit more than that. This is about free speech. Remember, these are our politicians and people seeking office. It's not fine for that to happen.
Well, Rebecca, final word to you. If I walked up to you in the street and milkshaked you, or if I, as somebody else did in the case of Nigel Farage, throw what was believed to be coffee cups full of cement, and I avoided prison, would you not feel a little bit aggrieved at that? Would you not think you'd want me to go to prison for that?
Well, you know, I kind of believe in prison abolition generally, so I personally, of course, would not. And more widely, I think the law is pretty robust and well established here. I think if somebody is not injured and somebody's property is not damaged, there's a good reason you wouldn't. In terms of whether this is a left-right thing, I think it's more likely that she's a very beautiful, quite charming young woman, and those people do tend to benefit quite well. When you're on trial, it's less left-right, more when you look at somebody, how do they present?
You think that's a really interesting point. Sorry to cut you off, but so you think there is a possibility that she received what you might describe as beauty privilege?
I think people, statistically from what I've seen, good-looking young people who are eloquent tend to do better in those situations, and older, uglier people who are less educated or less charismatic do tend to do worse, and that's a problem with the justice system. That's not left-right, that's just people being people.
It also does unfortunately mean that I would presumably be screwed if ever I went in front of a judge. But
no, darling, you get off free.
Thank you very much. All right, OK, take care, both of you. Lovely stuff, especially that bit at the end. That is human rights lawyer David Haig there, and journalist and author Rebecca Reid. Well, thank you very much, both of you. Look, my views on this are pretty clear. I don't think you should be able to milkshake a member of Parliament or really anyone in public and essentially get away with it. But anyway, in a slight change of tone, during Advent, as we count down to Christmas Day, we are hearing from church ministers right across the country. Each day, they have a special message for you to help celebrate this Christmas period.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 16.
Hi, I'm Chris Tufnell. I'm the vicar of Uterbridge Parish Church near Sheffield. Chaos or calm? Which word better describes your experience of Christmas? The Christmas cards give us pictures of idyllic calm, don't they? Robins on snow-covered postboxes, Mary and Joseph having a quiet night in. But that's not what Christmas feels like for many of us, and in reality, I'm sure it's not what that first Christmas felt like either. After all, Mary went through childbirth in a stable, and I'm pretty sure it won't have been calm like on the Christmas cards. But it does say in the Bible that after the shepherds had gone, Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. She had good reason to ponder these things. After all, they were happening to her. But I think that we have good reason to ponder these things as well. You know, I think it's hard to deny that Jesus has influenced this world more than anyone else who's ever lived. That's a big claim, I know, but I think it's true. And so might you, this Christmas, like Mary, find some calm amid the chaos to ponder this man who has changed our world forever. Happy Christmas.
Yes, and you can see all of our very special Advent messages as Christmas approaches by going to gbnews.com/Advent. Have a very Merry Christmas. And by the way, I'm looking forward to seeing you on Christmas morning, because Emily and I will be doing the Christmas Day breakfast show. But coming up, a Labour minister has refused to rule out letting the ISIS bride, Shamima Begum, come back to the UK. So would letting Begum back in Britain be the final nail in Keir Starmer's coffin? Well, former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, joins me live on that soon. But first, big story this. The Church of England has been plunged into a fresh crisis tonight after the Archbishop, set to take over from Justin Welby, was accused of covering up child abuse. Is there a theme there? So is the Church's reputation now finished? Former chaplain to the late Queen, Dr. Gavin Ashenden, is live and he's next.
Good evening. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Whilst it is going to stay mild for many of us as we go into tomorrow, there will be some wet and windy weather to come. That's because there is currently a system waiting out in the Atlantic, but ahead of this, we do currently have a front that's been lingering across some parts of northern Scotland and has already brought a fair amount of rain. That rain is going to ease as we go through tonight and into tomorrow morning. Otherwise, across other parts of the country, largely dry. Quite a bit of cloud coming in from the west, but some clear skies towards eastern parts in particular. And that cloud will do two things. Could bring some hill fog to parts of the south, and also it means our temperatures aren't going to drop. So it is going to be a mild and blustery start to the day for some of us tomorrow. As we go through tomorrow morning, then yes, quite a dry start across many parts of central southern England and Wales. A few spots of rain where the clouds thick enough, and like I said, could be a bit murky. Some hill fog to watch out for too. Further north across Northern Ireland and many parts of Scotland, outbreaks of rain already pushing their way through as we go through tomorrow morning. None of it looks particularly heavy at this point, but the rain is going to become a bit more persistent, a bit heavier as we go through the day. So we could see some spray on the roads and other travel disruption is possible. As well as the rain coming through, the winds will be strengthening as we go through the day. Risk of gales around coastal parts and towards the northwest. All the time towards the southeast, staying drier and some glimmers of sunshine as well. Temperatures above average for the time of year, most places getting into double figures, so feeling pretty mild. That rain eventually pushes through overnight into Wednesday, and then Wednesday we have a bit of a cloudy, at times damp story across much of England and Wales. A bit brighter for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but plenty of blustery showers pushing their way through. Some further wet weather to come at times as we go through Thursday and Friday, but also some sunshine. Notice, however, our temperatures are going to markedly drop. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Coming up, Labour have refused to rule out letting Shamima Begum back into Britain. People joked about this before the general election. Is it actually happening now? But first, the Church of England child abuse scandal has already brought down the Archbishop of Canterbury, and now it seems it may be about to bring down another clerical career, because the second most senior Anglican churchman, Stephen Cottrell, who is currently the Archbishop of York, is now facing calls to resign, as it's emerged that he let a priest, David Tudor, continue his ministerial duties despite allegedly having prior knowledge of Tudor paying £10,000 in compensation to a sexual abuse victim. Tudor was dismissed from clerical duties just 2 months ago after admitting abusing 2 teenage girls, though at least 7 women say that they were abused by him. I'm joined now by the former Anglican bishop and confidant of our late Queen, Dr. Gavin Ashenden. Great to have you on the show. Thank you very much, and a very merry Christmas period to you as well, although the subject matter here is a bit bleak. This is pretty dire, isn't it? I mean, the current Archbishop of York, allegedly knew of child abuse and didn't report it. Is that what Welby did, or have I got something wrong here?
Well, it's almost the right facts. We need to get exactly the right facts, otherwise they can demur. So the present Archbishop of York had within his diocese somebody who'd been found guilty of sexual misdemeanours. Now, he claims that as bishop at the time, under the rules, he wasn't able to take any further action. That may be the case. However, the man in question, a man called Mr. Tudor, had 2 promotions at the hands of the bishop. And if the bishop had been seriously concerned, as he should have been, then both of those positions of honour should have been withdrawn. He could have done that. Everyone agrees he should have done that. He didn't do that. And the problem here is he's trying to hide from the responsibility by saying there was a legal process I couldn't enact. Now, what they haven't learned is that when they failed on the job, they need to apologise, say sorry, and make amends. The real difficulty here is they keep on covering up and not telling the truth, and that's unsustainable in their positions.
I've got here as part of this report. So apparently, David Tudor was allowed to remain in post. You've said there that he then went on to get a couple of promotions. He'd been barred by the church from being alone with children. Well, I'm sorry, that's usually a pretty good indication that maybe somebody's a wrong one.
Yes, well, he was made a canon of the cathedral, which is a kind of gong from your bishop, and it should have been taken away from him. He was made an area dean, given responsibility to other clergy. How the bishop could have put his trust in him and given him those jobs, knowing what he knew, is just astonishing. And what the Archbishop of York should do is say, I made a dreadful mistake, I apologise, and then leave it to his peers and public opinion as to whether or not he's trustworthy and has learnt any lessons. The problem at the moment is he hasn't learnt any lessons and he's covering up. And that's absolutely why he has to resign.
Welby was accused of not taking this seriously enough through his initial actions, i.e. not reporting that particular individual to police for whatever. But then also in his subsequent response to that, I had to go because we needed to have a head that rolled and only my head rolled well enough. Well, goodness gracious me, what a lesson in catastrophic management. The impression was that he didn't actually really think that the issue of child abuse was a genuine problem. There have been a couple of other people who are prominent in the Church of England who have again come out and said similar stuff. And now there's this guy who again is accused of not taking child sexual abuse particularly seriously. You do start to paint a picture, Dr. Gavin, of the Church of England, the higher-ups in it, not actually thinking that child abuse is a big deal.
Well, it's more serious than even you're describing, Patrick, because many of us have been in touch with victims of sexual abuse. And the thing they can constantly complain about is, we let you know, we told you, we asked you to do something about it. Not only did you do nothing, but you fobbed us off. So there's a man called Matthew Ineson, who's one of the major witnesses for the Independent Sexual Abuse Commission, ICSA, and he complained about the Bishop of Oxford, a man called Stephen Croft, and said, I've been to him 5 times. I've asked to meet him. He continually refutes what I've said and doesn't do anything about it. How is it possible that he's allowed not to be accountable? There's another one called Bishop Glyn Webster. The same thing, something similar is said about him. In other words, I don't want to suggest that we're entitled to try these senior clergy on air. That's not fair. But there are accusations that have been made against them that they've either covered up or not done their duty and not done their job. And if that's the case, they either have to explain why that is or they have to resign. At the moment, the evidence seems to be that they should resign.
All right. Well, look, thank you for coming on. As former Anglican bishop there, Dr. Gavin Ashenden, I'm at pains to say that there's a couple of people mentioned there who, obviously, we haven't been to for comment. They presumably will deny some of those allegations. They are not here to defend themselves. But in a statement, the Archbishop of York said, "I am deeply sorry that we were not able to take action earlier, but that was the situation I inherited. It is extremely disappointing that this story is being reported." Good grief. It is extremely disappointing that this story is being reported, as if it was an abuser being ignored or even protected. Nothing could be further from the truth. The situation with David Tudor was an awful situation to live with and to manage. I want victims and survivors to know that everything was done to understand, assess and manage the risk. I fully welcome the outcome of the tribunal in October 2024. Well, there we go. OK, I've still got a heck of a lot more coming your way. At 10 p.m, there's this.
Be vigilant, do as I did, reject the claim, and perhaps we should all form a group and get together and fight it together.
I am not making this up. A convicted terrorist is suing a pub called the Sarahson's Head, saying that that name is offensive and racist. I mean, has integration failed, do we think? And isn't it time that we stop caving into these people? I'll give you my take at 10 p.m. But first...
Did you know what Islamic State were doing when you left for Syria? Because they had beheaded people, there were executions.
Yeah, I knew about those things and I was okay with it.
Labour haven't ruled out bringing Begum back. The Sun's former editor Kelvin Mackenzie joins me live and next.
Good afternoon, Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
I'm joined with Ryan Mark Parsons, who's a TV personality, a columnist, and he was on The Apprentice a few years back, weren't you? That's where most people would recognise your face from, one of the youngest contenders ever on The Apprentice. How did that work out?
Well, you know what? I never in a million years thought I'd get on the show. I was 18 when I applied. There were about 6 months of auditions. It was intense. You met Lord Sugar's advisors, his lawyers, his business advisors. It was the most intense thing I've ever done. And I just thought, never in a million years am I going to get on the show as a teenager. And I got the call from the exec. And he was like, "You're one of the 16 candidates." And it was just like, really? So I took a gap year. I've just finished my A-levels. I was working in Harrods before. And I just came up with this business idea, took it onto the show, and I got fired in the end. I lasted 8 weeks, which wasn't too bad. But
what was the business idea? Educate me.
A concierge, similar to companies like Velocity Black, quintessentially, that work with some of the private banks. It was similar to that. I was inspired by my time in Harrods, working with some of these ultra high net worth clients. So I just wrote a 40-page business plan like we all have to do. But I didn't make it to the interview, so I didn't get to talk about it. But no, it was a great experience, a very tough experience, but unforgettable.
So at a young age, how did that change your life at that age? Because you must have got recognised, starting to be recognised when you're going out and about town.
Yeah, I mean, it happened quite quickly because the adverts start rolling out on BBC One and then the shows go on air. It's once a week on a Wednesday. You're getting about 7 million people tuning in every week.
Yep.
And yeah, it was surreal. It was surreal. And then suddenly you get invitations to things. You're going to premieres, and it was a lot. It was a lot at a young age, and I obviously had no training for any of that. But I just embraced it, and I've had fun with it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, Sheffield Hallam University has cut off the economist Professor Steve Fothergill after he published a paper revealing that about half of the jobs in former coal mining areas are now taken up by migrants. The report also suggested the need to better regulate migration in the UK to bring down the numbers so that more of the benefits of local regeneration feed through to local residents. Following the publication of this paper, his part-time contract was terminated, prompting that professor to accuse the university of suppressing academic freedom, basically saying that because he drew a conclusion that the woke university doesn't like, he's been sacked. Well, a spokesperson for Sheffield Hallam did say that Professor Steve Fothergill is not employed by the university anymore, and he's been seconded as well. And I'll go to that full thing in a second. But former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, joins me right now. Kelvin, are we seeing people getting sacked from inconvenient truths here, do you think?
About this case is this: that professor, who is eminent in his area, joined Hallam in 1992, which was the founding of the university, previously it being kind of like a clapped out tech, and it becomes a university. And although his thought processes have been great for what is the thick end of 32 years, immediately he publishes this paper, he suddenly finds that he's no longer required. And you know who first revealed this? It was the economics columnist for The Guardian. Now, you wouldn't have thought that The Guardian, me, possibly you, and possibly all your viewers would be on the same page, but they are, because he was very hostile to what happened. He pointed out that this man is not a bigot, it just is a fact. The guy is used to dealing in facts, and what is terrible in effectively the red wall areas of our country, that in fact, that 60% of the jobs are okay, but 40% go to outsiders. How can that be right in difficult areas? And by the way, Sheffield is one of the difficult areas. So he was writing about something he really knows about. So The Guardian are even on the side of this professor, but the people who aren't on the side appear to be the university.
Yeah, I mean, the professor is pretty clear that he feels as though he was sacked for printing the truth about immigration, and that is a shocking fact that about 40% of work in those areas, in red wall areas, is taken up by people who were not born in Britain. And just quickly, what Sheffield Hallam have to say is that he's not employed by the university. He's been seconded to the university for 1 day per week on an external contract, and they've ended that shortly. They are talking about financial pressures, and they have a desire to uphold free speech. Story 2 that I want to cover with you, Kelvin, is about Shamima Begum. And it appears as though Labour, Angela Eagle anyway, the Border Security Minister, as it were, is not ruling out letting Begum back. If they do, would this be the final nail in Keir's coffin? People were joking about this in the run-up to the election, Kelvin.
This has been on the cards from the beginning. Why? Because who do you think the Attorney General is now? The most senior lawyer in the country. That man was Begum's counsel, right? So Starmer says, oh, right, here's a good job for you. You take that and you deal with this hot potato for me. Right? And there's a second reason why Labour. So this is all about Labour. The second reason, of course, is that as we saw in the July election, there were a lot of Muslims who did not actually want to vote for Mr. Starmer and didn't vote for Mr. Starmer. And so this will be a signal to them, look, chums, we're on your side. We'll take her back.
I don't know. The only thing, I mean, woe betide me for stepping on your toes, Calvin. I suppose I can hear a clamour from aspects of the Muslim community say, "Oh, hang on a minute, we don't all support Shamima Begum. She was a fan of ISIS for a period of time, and we weren't." I think it's more of a thing about Britain, the precedent that this would set, right? Because there are other people like Shamima Begum who've been in these camps in Syria for goodness knows how long, who now are potentially in threat because of the new terrorists who are in charge of Syria. If we let Shamima back, then presumably we have to let them all back as well.
Yes, I mean, this has been going on now for 10 years. She was 15 when she left. She's 25 today. Two of the girls that she lived with are now dead, right? She had 3 children out there. They're all dead. The man that she married, he's dead. The whole thing is a complete disaster, and it is of her own making. But this doesn't stop there being a massive campaign in East London to bring her back again. And with, as I said before, with Starmer having appointed Begum's counsel to be his attorney general, and he said that it was completely wrong that she's been kept out in Syria in this way, I absolutely guarantee to you that 2 years from today, you will be having programs on there in which Begum is arriving at Heathrow Airport.
Yeah, it's Begum's former counsel. I get what you mean. And again, I'll just refer back to it. This was seen as a joke in the run-up to the election. Oh, if you get first Starmer in, I bet Shamima will be back. And here we are. There's a really good chance that it could happen. Kelvin, thank you very much for your time, as ever, this evening. Former editor of Sunday, Kelvin Mackenzie, picking through two vitally important stories. 40% of the workforce in the Red Wall is apparently now foreign born. Shamima Begum might be back in Britain. Who could have predicted both of those two things? Coming up at 10 p.m, though, in just a couple of minutes' time, a convicted Islamist is suing a pub called the Sarahson's Head, saying that its name is offensive and, quote, racist. I mean, you just couldn't make this stuff up. But is he only trying it on because we've been such a soft touch as a nation? I mean, I suspect so. We've given in too many times. Stay tuned.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Whilst it is going to stay mild for many of us as we go into tomorrow, there will be some wet and windy weather to come. That's because there is currently a system waiting out in the Atlantic, but ahead of this, we do currently have a front that's been lingering across some parts of northern Scotland and has already brought a fair amount of rain. That rain is going to ease as we go through tonight and into tomorrow morning. Otherwise, across other parts of the country, largely dry. Quite a bit of cloud coming in from the west, but some clear skies towards eastern parts in particular. And that cloud will do two things. Could bring some hill fog to parts of the south, and also it means our temperatures aren't going to drop. So it is going to be a mild and blustery start to the day for some of us tomorrow. As we go through tomorrow morning, then yes, quite a dry start across many parts of central southern England and Wales. A few spots of rain where the clouds thick enough, and like I said, could be a bit murky. Some hill fog to watch out for too. Further north, across Northern Ireland and many parts of Scotland, outbreaks of rain already pushing their way through as we go through tomorrow morning. None of it looks particularly heavy at this point, but the rain is going to become a bit more persistent, a bit heavier as we go through the day. So we could see some spray on the roads and other travel disruption is possible. As well as the rain coming through, the winds will be strengthening as we go through the day. Risk of gales around coastal parts and towards the northwest. All the time towards the southeast, staying drier and some glimmers of sunshine as well. Temperatures above average for the time of year, most places getting into double figures, so feeling pretty mild. That rain eventually pushes through overnight into Wednesday, and then Wednesday we have a bit of a cloudy, at times damp story across much of England and Wales. A bit brighter for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but plenty of blustery showers pushing their way through. Some further wet weather to come at times as we go through Thursday and Friday, but also some sunshine. Notice, however, our temperatures are going to markedly drop. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash.
My name is Cliff. And my name is Julie. And we won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. OK, we're back early. It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
Vigilant, do as I did, reject the claim, and perhaps we should all form a group and get together and fight it together.
A convicted Islamist is suing a pub called the Sarahson's Head, saying that its name is offensive.
If there are elections taking place to a council that it essentially won't exist within the term of those elections, then you hold off the elections.
Labour suspend local elections for up to 2 years. Surely that's actually a threat to democracy. And what are they scared of?
That man is not allowed in my pub. Get out of my pub. Go on. Get out of my pub.
Ah, yes. Could it be that Starmer's got the lowest approval ratings of any PM in modern history?
For many decades, we've worked together on oil and gas, which has provided us with energy for a very long time now.
And reportedly, Keir Starmer has spent the equivalent of an entire month in the sky flying on foreign trips. Can he really survive as Prime Minister? Also, the girl who attacked Farage avoids jail. But the people who did similar stuff to both Corbyn and Miliband were sent to prison. So why were they treated so differently?
Did you know what Islamic State were doing when you left for Syria? Because they had beheaded people, there were executions.
Yeah, I knew about those things and I was okay with it.
It's just a bad thing. I'm OK with it. Labour have refused to rule out letting Shamima Begum back in Britain. That's ridiculous. Oh, and it turns out that this was fake news.
He clutches my arm tightly with both hands. Okay. Does anyone have any water? Water.
That poor victim turned out to reportedly be a torturer for the Assad regime. I've got tomorrow's newspaper front pages tonight, and there are some corkers on there, by the way, with columnist Carol Malone. We've also got journalist Benjamin Butterworth and the associate editor at the Daily Express, Sam Lister. And can anyone explain what the heck is going on here? Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Jihadis are coming for your pubs. Next.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines. It's just gone 10 o'clock. The alleged Chinese spy linked to Prince Andrew has said he did nothing wrong or unlawful after he was named publicly for the first time. The High Court lifted a ban on naming Yang Tengbo, described as a close contact of the Duke, after rejecting his bid for anonymity. The 50-year-old, who was banned from Britain on national security grounds, ran a lobbying firm with ties to Beijing, Westminster and royal circles. Yang reportedly attended the Duke's birthday party in 2020 and helped organise a UK-China business summit. Pressure to reveal his identity mounted after Reform UK's Nigel Farage vowed to name him in Parliament. Meanwhile, the Duke of York will not join the royal family for Christmas at Sandringham, according to sources. It's understood both Prince Andrew and his ex-wife, the Duchess of York, have decided to avoid the annual family gathering amid the ongoing scandal over the Duke's close links to the alleged Chinese spy. Police in the US say at least 3 people are dead and 6 are injured after a shooting at a school in Wisconsin. The shooting occurred at Abundant Life Christian School in the state capital of Madison. A teenage student and teacher died, and 2 students have life-threatening injuries. Meanwhile, another teenage student was identified as the suspected attacker. Residents have been asked to avoid the area and roads are closed near the school. In other news, the Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, has apologised for not acting sooner in the case of sex abuse by priest David Tudor, but insists there was no cover-up. Tudor, banned for life from ministry after admitting abuse involving 2 girls, was not removed until fresh complaints emerged. Cottrell said it was impossible to act sooner and described the case as horrible and intolerable. His statement follows an investigation and he stressed that Tudor was never protected. And Nigel Farage has condemned the suspended sentence given to the woman who threw a milkshake at him during the general election campaign, calling it an example of two-tier justice. OnlyFans model Victoria Thomas Bowen was sentenced to 13 weeks in prison, suspended for 12 months after pleading guilty to assault. The attack occurred outside a pub in Clacton in June as Farage campaigned for MP. The Reform UK leader took to social media to say, "We now live in a country where you can assault a member of parliament and not go to prison." Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
A convicted Islamist terrorist is trying to sue a pub because its name offends him. Khalid Bakr wants the Sarahson's Head Inn in Amersham to change its name. He says, "While walking through the area, I was shocked and deeply offended by what I saw. I saw pub signage depicting a brown-skinned, bearded Arab/Turk male with a turban and captioned the Saracens' Head. This instilled worry and fear in me, since it was clearly xenophobic, racist and inciting violence to certain people. I immediately complained to the pub and requested the signage be removed." Well, he knows a thing or two about instilling worry and fear into people, because in 2018 he was sentenced to 4 years and 8 months in prison for disseminating terrorist publications. Police said that Bakr from East London had also radicalised an impressionable teenager who then helped him distribute the material, which apparently included jihadi leaflets. He's been released from prison, so Bakr's back out, and he wants 1,850 quid from the pub. And if he's successful, he's reportedly going to try it on with at least 30 other pubs that have the same name. This is just the latest example of people with a radical track record trying to get British society to bend to their will. Now, this poor landlord at the pub is understandably quite worried for his safety.
I was asked to take a moment to Google him, and it was at that point I realised, yeah, like you rightly said, he is a convicted terrorist.
This is deeply concerning for many, many people, not just for you, your financial stability, but also your safety.
Of course.
The concern I have is that I suspect that the pub owners, Green King, will probably change the name. A name that, according to the landlord anyway, has stood for about 500 years. They've got form for doing this. They changed the name of their pub, the Magic Midget, named the MG Midget Sports Car. It's named after the MG Midget Sports Car, because a lecturer at Liverpool Hope University said that that was disablist hate speech. They also changed the name of, and excuse my language here, but the Black Bitch pub in West Lothian, which was named after a local greyhound dog because someone who wasn't even from the area kicked off. They also renamed 3 pubs called the Black Boy, despite it being a reference to the nickname King Charles II's mother gave to him. It is obviously hilarious that a man with an Islamist terror conviction is suing a pub, but there is a serious point here. This is how people are scared into silence. Do Green King or the pub landlord want the heat? Probably not, and fair enough. Did the teachers at Batley Grammar School want the heat when a mob turned up outside making all kinds of threats because a teacher there allegedly showed a picture of the Prophet Muhammad to some kids?
The incident from Monday, 22nd of March, must also be investigated from a criminal perspective. Yes. Given that it was a clear attempt to stir up religious hatred. We also use this opportunity to call upon the entire British Muslim community to review the materials being taught in their children's schools.
Well, the teacher in question there is reportedly in hiding and probably will be for the rest of his life. I mean, did the mother of an autistic child who accidentally scuffed a copy of the Quran want to have to go to the local Islamic centre and beg for forgiveness from the elders? Well, no, probably not. The RAF apparently changed the name of their Crusaders squadron because they had a complaint that it might offend Muslims. Well, we've had a little taste of it here at GB News as well, with the recent report from a group affiliated with the Muslim Council of Britain, which accused us of all sorts of things. That was probably designed to stop us reporting, I imagine, by the way, stuff like this, right? But fundamentally, the reason why the likes of Khalid Bakr try it on is because we've been such a soft touch. Intimidation, legal threats, the fear of being labelled racist, people have caved in, and it's set a precedent. But honestly, if a court of law rules that a pub has to change its name and pay compensation to a convicted terrorist because he's offended by something, then frankly, we might as well all pack our bags and get out of here, because it means the country's gone, doesn't it? Let's get the thoughts of our panel this evening. We've got journalist and broadcaster Carol Malone. We have commentator and writer Benjamin Butterworth. We also have the associate editor of the Daily Express. It is Sam Lister. Carol, is this a sign, do you think, that potentially certain aspects of multiculturalism and integration have failed?
Not aspects, I think all of it. I think integration has totally and utterly failed. We were having this conversation 7 or 8 years ago when Angela Merkel, no, farther than that, 2010, she said it had utterly failed. So did Sarkozy. So did David Cameron. He even said it was partly responsible for a lot of terrorism. So, you know, but we couldn't have that conversation now because we can't offend those communities. You know, integration has failed because we have allowed people from different cultures and different countries to come into this country and live parallel lives within it. We have allowed them to live separate lives. We have allowed them, people from different cultures and cultures, to come here and make us change our way of life. You know, things like, you know, there are many things that offend me from this particular culture. The fact that we have to live with Sharia law in this country, which reduces women to third-class citizens. The fact we have Islamic schools, which completely separates boys and girls and doesn't teach girls, doesn't educate them in proper ways. All of those things grossly offend me. Now, why are we changing our culture, our community, to accommodate one particular culture? It never ceases to amaze me. And I think, you know, how dare anyone come here? And we can't even now say we're a patriot because it might offend religion.
Well, look, there's a lot for you to come back to there, Benjamin, so have at it.
Well, I mean, the point about segregated religious schools, I don't think we should have religious schools at all, but I'm afraid, you know, you have Orthodox Jewish schools that are as extreme as some of the Islamic schools.
The girls don't get taught the same educational stuff as the lads.
Yeah, you have that, regrettably, in a few Orthodox Jewish schools. Catholic schools have long refused to teach LGBT education, and governments have allowed that to remain the case. The idea that this means, because I mean, this guy's clearly an idiot, he's a convicted terrorist, and his claim is nonsense. If he wanted attention, well, he's got it. He's not going to get the £2,000 he wants, I suspect.
He might.
I suspect it won't get anywhere. Not a chance. You know, it's not racist. It's just a plea for attention. But I think what might be racist is to say that because there's one extremist and he's been convicted, that means multiculturalism has failed. You know, there are many Muslims in this country, the vast majority, who contribute to this country. Many of them have made it to the top of government in recent years. That is an example of multiculturalism. Some of the richest people in this country aren't from here. I think as an Indian family is the richest. You know, on my recent travels, I met an Indian man who had grown up in relative poverty in India, and he got a scholarship to a top uni in Britain, and he now lives in London. And he said to me that the one thing that makes Britain so extraordinary is that as an Indian with an Indian accent, there's nowhere in the world where he could go and turn up to work and his work be what he's judged on. And that is because Britain is multicultural, and we should be proud of that.
OK, another point to maybe make here, though, Sam, is that perhaps that's because we are actually a very, very tolerant country, and maybe in certain cases we've been a little bit too tolerant, bordering, well, no, I would argue not bordering, just being a pushover. And if this chap feels like he can try it on, that's probably because there's a long track record of people trying it on and winning.
Yeah, we are a tolerant nation, and that's why people want to move here.
we are a nation who accepts all faiths and none. I think Kemi Badenoch actually expresses it very well when she talks about how she wants to see a multi-ethnic country rather than a multicultural country, a country where actually you are embracing Britain, you are patriotic, you believe in Britain as a concept, rather than segregation in communities. Nobody wants to see that. And I think on the soft touch point, actually what this really illustrates is, we have a legal system that is absolutely on the brink of collapse. We have women who have been raped who can't get justice. We have essentially shoplifting is decriminalising this country, and yet we have people like this blocking up the system with spurious claims, and it's just insane. It says to people at home, actually serious criminals can get away with not being up before the legal system, and then these spurious claims will be given credence.
I was going to say, this guy Backwell, I listened to the pub Landlord today talking about this. He says this guy's never been in his pub. He said he's never seen the bloke. The bloke says he's been in 4 times, and the landlord said no, he hasn't. He said what he's done. He said he's now heard that this guy is targeting other pubs with the name Sarahson in the thing, and he's saying he's doing it like a spread bet, because if he has to go with 10 of them, he might get £4,000 added 2 of them. So that he's trying it on. So this is not about religion. This is not about being offended. This is about making money, and we should actually just tell him to get lost. Who cares if he's offended? I mean, even if he is genuinely offended, I don't care. We should not have to change our culture. And if he even knew what the name Saracen meant, it actually refers to Saladin, who was a crusader, and it was a way people were honouring him, paying homage to him by calling him that.
The thing I will say is there appears to be a bit of discrepancy online as to whether or not this guy is going to target other pubs, etc.
There has been.
But it's been reported that he has. In some reports, it's just that he has. In others, maybe not. But we wait and see.
But if you can do it online this easy, Patrick, if you can take a case to court online, it's not
right. But Benjamin, I would just say, does this not highlight, because there's a track record of people caving into stuff. Now, whether it's this, which has got, I would argue, maybe another aspect rolled up to it, this guy's a convicted extremist, etc.
Yes.
Or whether it's things like pubs like the Black Boy Inn or whatever, changing the name, road signs being changed, people just giving in, because the worst thing that you could possibly ever be conceived of, pretty much, in Britain now is to be, even accidentally, racially insensitive.
Well, first of all, on Sam's point, if only he just nicked the sign, he would have got rid of it and there'd been no consequences. That would have saved the whole Ferrari. But look, in the general point of whether some of these names, like the ones that I'm not going to repeat that you suggested in the monologue, look, some of those things, times have changed, they are offensive.
But one of them was about a dog, but it was literally about a greyhound dog.
Right, but you just know that is going to be a point of amusement, a point of horror, maybe a point of offence for people.
Oh, please!
Can I just say one of them they wanted to change?
Years ago, in the 70s, there were, people blackfacing on Saturday night telly, and
but that's not what this pub is. Can I also just raise another point? There were a couple of other pubs that fell under scrutiny recently. The Fighting Cocks. Right, PETA, the animal rights organisation, wanted to change those names because it gave it promoted animal cruelty, supposedly. Apparently, they wanted to change it to the Happy Hens. And then there's also a pub now. I think it was called the Sly Fox, which apparently gave a negative portrayal of foxes. Well, let me tell you what, the foxes that are rampant in more ways than one outside my flat every night, they're certainly not sly. They're not behind the door. So, this is the kind of level that we're at, right? People trying it on.
I mean, it's just silly, isn't it? And, I think you make a good point, Patrick, that actually what these organisations do, whether it's PETA or, religious groups or whatever, they basically flood media organisations, they flood pubs, they flood any kind of organisation they want to target. They flood them with this kind of bureaucracy. They bombard them with like a social media campaign, then they throw legal letters into the mix, and they make it so difficult that in the end people just cave in because nobody has the capacity to be able to fight these things, and that's how they win.
The Magic Midget, apparently there was a petition there from a lady who is a professor at a university in Liverpool that, I'll be honest with you, I'd never heard of, who happens to have a disability herself in the Height Department. And there was a petition that got something like 1,300 signatures. Well, that's it. I wonder how many of those people are living in the area. Oh, we changed the name of the Magic Midget.
There was a counter petition. There was a counter petition that gained more signatures.
Well,
this is the point. Actually, most people disagree with these things.
Yeah.
Sorry,
if you
Kat.
criticise multiculturalism now and integration, it's seen as heresy by the political and cultural elites. You know, you're immediately slated as a racist and a bigot and xenophobic, and your opinion is not supposed to count anymore. We have to criticise this. We cannot change our way of life because of one culture.
But nobody is doing that.
Yes, they are. We have changed.
It's just nonsense.
Everything that Patrick has just listed, we have changed the way we live, the way we speak and the things we do to accommodate people and cultures who are offended.
No, the whole country is not being changed for the sake of one person. This guy is not going to get anywhere. In fact, the country convicted him of terrorism.
He would have done if the Sun had not taken up the story. He would have got the money.
It is not right. You know, what, 60 years after HMS Windrush, Britain has been multicultural and multi-ethnic for a very long time. We went out to the world and exported ours and then invited them back. And Britain is so much richer for having this variety.
This is
the
not
whole
true.
world envies
We allow
Britain's
segregated communities to behave in ways that run contrary to our values in this country.
One thing I will say, and by the way, and I am not just saying this, by the way, I do suspect that there are huge chunks of the British Muslim community who also think this guy's taking the absolute...
Yeah, absolutely. They really do.
And actually, it is people like this that then lead to problems for other people who don't deserve any problems. But, you know, this is obviously an issue for this chap involved. In a statement to the Sun, can I just say, what I'm about to read you now is hilarious, right? So this is his statement to the Sun. Backer says, "I've always been offended by pub names like these, but I've only recently discovered how I can challenge them online. You ready? I've stopped all the terrorism stuff now." Behind me, that. No, it was a face. I've stopped.
Well, I'm reassured. I don't know about you. I'm reassured.
I tell you what, I for one, I'm almost on his side. No, I'm not. Right, it's time now for the greatest and biggest ever Great British giveaway this year. And it's your chance to win £50,000 in cold, hard, tax-free cash. It's the biggest cash prize we've ever given away, and here's how all that money could be yours.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yeah, coming up, I will be bringing you a very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, so stay tuned for that. But first, there's a damning new poll that's revealed that voters think that Keir Starmer is the worst Prime Minister in modern history. So can the Prime Minister actually survive the next year? Former Labour Defence Secretary is going to have to do some more defence here. It's Jeff Hoon. Stay tuned.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
This is Miss Universe fans hailing the end of wokeness and crediting the Trump effect after a biological woman, there's still some of them around apparently, has won the 2024 crown. She's Miss Denmark, because obviously the last decade, you know, it's just been a beast transgender smurfs from Papua New Guinea. They're the only people allowed to win any beauty contest, you know what I mean? You're not allowed to have any.
There's some of the trans women have won these. You definitely wouldn't say no.
Honestly, I've seen some, but I've seen some of them that didn't, and some that were clearly just there out of
Have there been more than one trans woman? I didn't realise this.
Yeah.
Okay,
I've got a chart at home. This one isn't trans. Victoria Kjær Thielvig, 21 of Denmark. Everything about that description says attractive.
Nazis. Okay, yeah. I have seen pictures of her. She is very attractive.
Yes.
She is. Yes. I don't know exactly how to put it, but she is kind of not retro or vintage or so. She's quite an old-fashioned notion of beauty, just absolutely ice blue eyes.
No penis.
Absolutely extraordinary, clear skin and gorgeous blonde hair. I mean, it's absolutely kind of mid-70s.
Apparently, the sanity's returned to the beauty pageant industry, so they can get back to sexualising 4-year-olds and promoting anorexia like they used to. So
there is that.
She will earn an estimated $250,000 annual salary working full-time as Miss Universe, and will live in a luxurious New York City apartment as she carries out her duties, which involve glass coffee tables and rich Saudi businessmen.
Glass coffee tables. And visiting other planets and solar systems and constellations, I would imagine, in Miss Universe.
Being concerned about animals.
Yes, absolutely, and wanting to bring about world peace. I miss those days.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, very shortly, I've got all of the front pages coming your way. There is some stuff about Prince Andrew on there that you might find interesting. But first, the Prime Minister has tonight been rocked by this damning new poll. So he's found that he's the worst Prime Minister in modern history, apparently, after just 5 months in the job. So Starmer's latest net satisfaction rating of -34 means his popularity has plummeted at an unprecedented rate. It took Gordon Brown's approval rating well over 300 days to plunge to the level that Keir Starmer's is currently languishing at. Well, that comes as it emerges that the Prime Minister has spent, get ready for this, an astonishing 159 hours and 46 minutes in the air travelling on foreign trips. That's apparently the equivalent of 1 working month spent on planes. That's out of 5 working months he's had in office so far. And surprise, surprise, Starmer was racking up yet more air miles today, landing in to announce a new green energy deal in Norway. Well, it's little wonder, is it, that the government will cancel next year's local elections and instead postpone them to 2026 or 2027. I'm very pleased to say I am joined now by the former Labour Minister, Jeff Hoon. Jeff, I hope you're having a wonderful Christmas period. Look, when it comes to Keir Starmer here, he's absolutely tanking in the polls. I mean, frankly, it's early days, but he cannot carry on like this, can he?
I read an interesting article in one of this morning's newspapers which said because we've had 3 Conservative prime ministers in almost as many years, the reality is many people are seeing the prime minister's job as being a bit like a football manager's. Few bad results and you're out the window. It's less than 6 months since Keir Starmer and the Labour Party achieved one of the largest majorities in political history, and things will calm down. into the new year. We're all going off for a holiday break, and the reality
Well, can I just say,
look
just
a lot
on that,
different.
Jeff, I don't think he should be taking a holiday, should he? Because freezing pensioners won't get a holiday, farmers won't be getting a holiday, they're both getting clobbered. You know, there's all of this stuff that he's done so far. The approval ratings are tanking, and he's spent 150 odd hours in the air. I mean, that's on top of the 50 million quid he's given to the Syrians, again, over the weekend. This isn't a Prime Minister of Britain, is he? He spends more time in the air than he does talking to the British public.
From my understanding, most of those meetings, they were all in any Prime Minister's diary. They were scheduled for Rishi Sunak, had he chosen to carry on rather than call what proved to him a disastrous general election in July. So let's be clear. Labour, Keir Starmer, won a landslide general election. It's less than 6 months into a parliament that can last another 4.5 years. And the reality is we all have to calm down, allow the government to take decisions to move ahead, rather like the decision today on local government. Governments have been talking for 50 years about the kind of reforms that were announced this morning. Absolutely remarkable transformation.
It's interesting that you mentioned the word reform in amongst the local elections being suspended, in some cases for a couple of years, Jeff, because the cynic in me would say that this was going to be a referendum on Keir Starmer's premiership so far, a premiership that, frankly, many people would regard as having made a lot of people's lives a lot worse, and he was going to get a kicking from reform in places like Lancashire, in places like Essex, and in places like Suffolk, which are all places where the local elections will now not be going ahead, in some cases for 2 years. I mean, some people are calling him a dictator because of this.
Well, again, let's be clear. Successive governments, and Conservative governments in particular, have talked about reforming local government, and they've failed to do it. The reality is, I'm in Derbyshire at the moment. We have 9 different local authorities for around 800,000 people. That cannot make sense. Everyone says it doesn't make sense. In fact, political experts can't tell you the difference between what a district council does and what a county council does. And the reality is, this is a major, significant reform that must go ahead on both financial but common sense
Well, why
grounds.
can't we just still have the elections, though? Why can't you just do both? I mean, it's a socialist thing to say we can do both. They always say it. That's when when people like me say, well, why are we paying for this as well as paying for that? And they go, oh, well, surely we can just do both. They want everyone to dig deeper. Well, why can't we just have more elections then? Why have we had to cancel it?
Because it doesn't make sense to hold local government elections for district councils.
Yes, it does. In the 2 years intervening, sorry, Jeff, but in Windsor and Maidenhead, they want to put council tax up 25%. If I lived in an area where my local council, my district council, was talking about not taking my bins out apart from once a month, they couldn't fix the potholes, but they wanted to rack up 25% worth of council tax, I'd be inclined to want to vote on that. I wouldn't want to wait until 2027 because Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner want to do something funky with the council.
Well, there will still be the opportunity of voting in local elections. There will no longer be a necessity to vote in both district council elections and county council elections. You're a political expert. Do you know the difference between the functions of those two institutions? As I say, in my county where I live, there are 9 local authorities that taxpayers in this county are paying for. It simply doesn't make sense.
Just lastly on that, I mean, there was a joke in the run-up to the election, wasn't there, that Keir Starmer, if you vote for Keir Starmer, Shamima Begum would be back in Britain before you know it. And actually now it looks like it's going to happen, doesn't it? I mean, the guy's a walking meme, isn't he, Jeff?
No, I don't agree with that at all. I mean, the reality is that we have to calm down as far as government is concerned. Government is not like managing a football team where a few bad results mean that you're out the door and another manager is appointed. The reality is we've got to make sure that this government, an elected government with an overwhelming majority, has the time
wasn't that Boris Johnson there?
to make a decision.
Wasn't Boris Johnson? He won a landslide, didn't he? He had an overwhelming majority. I mean, I don't remember the similar rhetoric here. We didn't need to all calm down over Boris, did we? It was time and time and time again. You know, we've got to get him on this. You've got to resign over this. Got to resign over that. Well, I'm sorry. It turned out that the same's happening with Labour now, and people have got buyer's remorse. He got a lower share. You keep going on about a landslide as well, Jeff. To be fair, he got a lower share of the vote than Jeremy Corbyn.
Actually, it isn't the same, because the difference is that Boris Johnson and then Liz Truss were both put out of office by their own people, by their own ministers, by their own members of parliament. That isn't going to happen in the Labour Party. That isn't going to happen to Keir Starmer.
All right, good stuff. Jeff, thank you very much. You are always a tremendous sport. Jeff Hoon there, the former Labour Defence Minister, who's doing a little bit more defence there. Good stuff. Now, coming up, I'll bring you the very latest when it comes to tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Apparently, there's a big story in town, and it's Prince Andrew, and it involves Christmas dinner staging. Oh, and how's the American broadcaster CNN been caught telling whopping great big lies?
He clutches my arm tightly with both hands. Does anyone have any water? Water.
It didn't look true, and it turns out it might not be. Stay tuned.
Good evening. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Whilst it is going to stay mild for many of us as we go into tomorrow, there will be some wet and windy weather to come. That's because there is currently a system waiting out in the Atlantic, but ahead of this, we do currently have a front that's been lingering across some parts of northern Scotland and has already brought a fair amount of rain. That rain is going to ease as we go through tonight and into tomorrow morning. Otherwise, across other parts of the country, largely dry. Quite a bit of cloud coming in from the west, but some clear skies towards eastern parts in particular. And that cloud will do two things. Could bring some hill fog to parts of the south, and also it means our temperatures aren't going to drop. So it is going to be a mild and blustery start to the day for some of us tomorrow. As we go through tomorrow morning, then yes, quite a dry start across many parts of central southern England and Wales. A few spots of rain where the cloud's thick enough, and like I said, could be a bit murky. Some hill fog to watch out for too. Further north, across Northern Ireland and many parts of Scotland, outbreaks of rain already pushing their way through as we go through tomorrow morning. None of it looks particularly heavy at this point, but the rain is going to become a bit more persistent, a bit heavier as we go through the day. So we could see some spray on the roads and other travel disruption is possible. As well as the rain coming through, the winds will be strengthening as we go through the day. Risk of gales around coastal parts and towards the northwest. All the time towards the southeast, staying drier and some glimmers of sunshine as well. Temperatures above average for the time of year, most places getting into double figures, so feeling pretty mild. That rain eventually pushes through overnight into Wednesday, and then Wednesday we have a bit of a cloudy, at times damp story across much of England and Wales. A bit brighter for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but plenty of blustery showers pushing their way through. Some further wet weather to come at times as we go through Thursday and Friday, but also some sunshine. Notice, however, our temperatures are going to markedly drop. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
OK, welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight, and I have got the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. So, we start with the Metro. The name's Yang Tengbo Yang, the alleged Chinese spy who became a close friend of Prince Andrew, even going to his birthday party, has been unmasked. The Independent. Unmasked. Spy close to Andrew says he's done nothing wrong. Well, yeah, but I mean, anyway. Yeah, all right, fine. You would, though, wouldn't you? I mean, you wouldn't be a very good spy, would you? Well, you know what, lads, you got me banged to rights here. Of course, he might have done nothing wrong. Anyway, let's go to the Eye. UK toughens up on surveillance on China suspects as Palace banishes Andrew again. The Daily Express. Now, this is a story that has got legs to it. So, a former NATO chief has given our Prime Minister Keir Starmer a stark warning. He says, boost your defence budget or cut 20,000 troops. Now, in a second, I'm going to tell you about a story that's not on the front pages. It was embargoed until 7 minutes ago, and it's about where Keir Starmer is and who he's talking to and how that might, frankly, anger a lot of you when it comes to our armed forces spending. But stay tuned for that in just a sec. The Telegraph, spy suspect was Duke's money man. Now, this is interesting because where has the money come for Royal Lodge? And, you know, that's... Why is Starmer... On the Daily Mail, why is Starmer still sucking up to the Chinese? They've kind of politicised it a bit. The Guardian... Alleged Chinese spy linked to Prince Andrew is named. Just to round us off with The Sun, Andrew stuffed at Xmas and a picture of him, his head on a turkey. Forced out a family meal. The Duke's spy pal is exposed. Right, let's deal with the Prince Andrew thing first. Carol, you made an interesting point here. You wonder if there's more to this story?
So a couple of months ago, when Charles wanted Andrew out, we thought he was going to be kicked out of Royal Lodge because Charles said he couldn't afford it and one man shouldn't be in there. However, Andrew suddenly came up with a story and said, I can pay for it. I can meet all the expenses. Now, the expenses for Royal Lodge for a year are about 3 million quid. 2 million quid for repairs, 250 grand on rent, or whatever. Amounts to nearly 3 million quid. And I'm thinking, how could Andrew afford to pay that? Now, this could be how he suddenly, out of nowhere, said, I can afford it. I have my independent means, I can afford it. So it could be coming from this guy. So if he's the Duke's money man, he's not, you know, he's paying Andrew, or there's money exchanging hands, because, you know, he's fixing for him. He's fixing for him to meet people, whatever. So, yeah, this could be where the money's come from.
So, I mean, there's a lot to this. The Chinese businessman who has mixed with figures from across the British establishment was a founding member of Prince Andrew's venture pitch at Palace.
Yes.
China. And the Duke is understood to have benefited financially from the scheme owing to a clause that allowed him to take 2% of investment deals. I mean... To be honest with you, this looks pretty bad, Benjamin.
It does, and Prince Andrew seems to have poor judgment every time.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's one thing when that put the royal family in peril. Now it seemingly could have put the whole country in peril. And I think that's concerning. I think the government has said that it's introducing a new law to be able to monitor foreign nationals to try and cut down on this happening. Because, of course, this isn't the only story of a Chinese spy. There was someone earlier this year who is accused of being a parliamentary staffer that was spying for China as well.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the question is, when Keir Starmer says we still need strong relations, and the head of MI5 only recently said it's complicated with China, well, at what economic cost are we willing to have these people infiltrate the top of British society?
And I do wonder with Andrew, and this is not an uncommon thing that people are wondering, is when you look at the track record there when it comes to his links to Epstein and Glenn Maxwell and all that stuff, what do spies traditionally look for? They look for a point of weakness. They look for compromising information. They look for that so that they have leverage over you. And it might not take that much to find that with Prince Andrew, potentially. Just to round this particular one off with you, Sam, you know, stuffed at Xmas. So basically, he's not going to be at the family meal. It doesn't look like he's going to be at Sandringham. He is now out in the cold.
He is the black sheep. I mean, he has been... I think Benjamin does make a good point. You know, this is a man whose judgment is called into question time and time again, and I think he is the weak spot. And we know that actually, while it's unlikely he can give any really detailed, compromising state secret type information to the Chinese, he is their very useful idiot in the UK.
OK. Yeah, let's just be glad that he's probably too stupid to understand half the state secrets.
He's got no information to give them, but he can make intros, can't he?
Yeah, exactly. That's the point.
I do want to get to this because this combines a couple of stories here. So if we bring up the front of the Daily Express, if we can, boost defence budget or axe 20,000 troops. So this is a warning to Keir Starmer from the former NATO chief. So boost your defence budget or you're going to lose 20,000 troops. Bearing in mind, I think we can already fit the entirety of the British Army into Wembley Stadium with room to spare. That's pretty stark. But tie it into this story, because this was embargoed until a few minutes ago. The Prime Minister is set to visit British troops serving on Russia's border, as he says that Ukraine will require more funding and capability. Speaking alongside the Estonian Prime Minister, Sir Keir said there is an ever-increasing demand for more capability and Ukraine needs all the capability that it can get. A lot of money has been raised, funding has been raised, but more is going to be needed. So that's what he says. To tie those two stories together, Sam, you could maybe make the case that he's preferring Ukraine over our own army.
Well, I mean, although he has actually come in for criticism in recent days from the Ukrainian government about his failure to really get behind Ukraine in the same way that Boris Johnson did and Rishi Sunak did. So I think it's very difficult because Keir Starmer promised to really back our defence, our troops, our military, but he hasn't actually ever put his money where his mouth is. When are we going to get the money? How much are we going to get? The peace dividend from the kind of collapse of the Eastern Bloc, that is over. Like, we now have to invest in defence in a way we haven't done since the 80s, and I think there is a real... it's a point now where we have to really think very clearly about the very real serious threat to our nation.
Indeed. Well, yeah, and look, should it really be a choice, this? You either lose... I mean, if we are, and I am, by the way, sympathetic, good grief to the people of Ukraine, don't get me wrong on that, but if it's a choice between being able to fit all of our armed forces into... into the Amex Stadium. I mean, let alone, Wembley. I mean, we should do that and not keep sending a load of money to Ukraine.
We have
surely
less in our army than we had 200 years ago. The thing is, Starmer has already said he agrees that 2.5% of GDP should be spent on defence. But what he will not say is when he's going to spend that kind of money. And the world is on a knife edge. It's never been in a more dangerous place than it is right now with the threat from Russia and China. And yet he's not committed. It's like he doesn't get the danger.
Just to say, you might now have seen what is a viral clip that's been going on over the weekend. All right, so this was of American broadcaster CNN's star reporter Clarissa Ward apparently rescuing a prisoner from one of former Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's most notorious jails.
It moved. Is there someone there? I thought I saw it move. Is someone there? Journalist. I'm a civilian, he says. I'm a civilian. He tells the fighter he's from the city of Homs and has been in the cell for 3 months. Okay, you're okay. You're okay. You're okay. You're okay.
Shock horror, everybody. Since then, it's emerged that there might be more to this heroic rescue because a Syrian fact-checking site claims that rescued man is in fact Salama Mohammed Salama, so good they named him twice, former Syrian Air Force intelligence officer. Residents of the Syrian city of Homs told that fact-checking site that he was frequently stationed at a checkpoint in the city's western entrance, infamous for its abuses. The allegation is that he actually was responsible for torture himself. So there we go. I mean, who'd have thought it? There's no track record, of course, of CNN ever doing anything like that in the past. Coming up, I'll bring you the rest of tomorrow's newspaper front pages and some mysterious lights in the sky over New Jersey. What's the truth?
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
A Tesco store on a Scottish island has defied locals by ignoring pleas to stay closed on Sundays.
Tesco's has said that no member of staff in Stornoway would be forced to work on a Sunday and that it had received a significant amount of positive reaction to its plans.
Well, let's talk now to the Minister of the Reformed Presbyterian Church, Reverend Kenneth Stewart. Good morning to you, Reverend Stewart. You're trying to keep Sunday special, and if Tesco are going to open up, that means it won't be quite as special for you.
Well, yes, good morning, and thanks for having me on. Yes, Tesco, for some reason, they claim it's not economic advantage, but for some reason they've decided to go against hundreds of years of tradition on this island and the deeply held religious convictions of many, many people, including, of course, their own customers who are really grieved by this decision. We come obviously from the standpoint that a day of rest is effectively mandatory. It's a human right, along with the other 10 commandments which have undergirded our moral and legal fabric in society. It actually enshrines the human right to a day of rest. And of course, in the UK, that's been eroded for many, many years. Incidentally, it's still far more respected on the continent. But for us here, the Sabbath or the day of rest has been very, very important. It's not just what we do, it's who we are. And for some reason, Tesco have decided just to go against that.
And Reverend Stewart, we were actually talking about this earlier, how in European countries, I mean, even in France, which is a secular country, still very few shops will open on a Sunday.
GB News, the People's Channel.
All right, welcome back. One more front page for you, and it's the Daily Mirror. And there's a theme across all the front pages, pretty much. It's royal spy unmasked. How many more? Prince Andrew's business pal named as a Chinese agent in court. Fears are growing of a network of Beijing spies at large embassies. I will just clarify one thing. There is, by the way, as it currently stands, no indication that this particular Chinese spy has indeed paid for Prince Andrew's stay at Royal Lodge. There are questions over where that money came from, though, so we have to wait and see. Right, OK, so those are your front pages. Now, some extraordinary footage. Drones have been spotted in the night sky, not in the Middle East, no, not in Ukraine, but in New Jersey, leaving locals of Roxbury Township stunned. And I can show you some of these remarkable drones now.
There's 2 behind here.
There's 2 over there.
Yeah, look. There's another one up here. Wow. 2 more coming out from this direction. That would be to the east. Wow.
So what makes this absolutely astonishing, OK, is that the US government is not telling local residents what these things are. They are not confirming if they're their own drones. They're not confirming if they are foreign threats. They are saying that they don't believe it poses a threat to national security. Well, in which case, why have you got a load of drones that you're not admitting to flying over your own military bases? Some people are trying to shoot them down. In fact, soon-to-be President Donald Trump has told people to shoot them down. So there you go. It is remarkable, really. Weird, no? Aliens, probably.
I think the most American response is, we don't know what it is, so let's shoot at it.
I think you've got a point there. There are like, there's like 50, 100 of these drones in the sky. Like, I'd want answers.
No, I mean, I think in this day and age, conspiracies take hold so quickly that they should really explain what it is before people really get mad and get wild.
I think it's fair enough. If you saw that over your house, you'd want answers. You know what I think? I don't know.
And if you saw it over a military base, you just wouldn't want them there, whoever they were.
Yeah, a bit bonkers, really. But anyway, obviously, it has got people going. I'm quite worried. I would be worried if I saw that over my house and the government was not saying what it was, but they were also taking zero action. Yeah. I would be slightly concerned. Let's do Greatest Britain Union Jackass. Who's your Greatest Britain, Carol?
Mine is Khaled Bakwa, or Bakwa, whatever you say. This is a convicted terrorist, jailed for 4 years for preparing jihadi propaganda. But yet he was...
This is Greatest Britain. Not Union Jack. This is your favourite. So sorry about that.
I thought this was going to have a real twist in the end of the tale.
That's the most exciting part.
That was quite the twist.
I can very rarely find nice things about nice people. Anyway, here we go.
She's got a small claims thing in already, haven't you?
Here we go. Sorry, well spotted there.
That's all right.
My Greatest Britain is Bishop Helen Ann Harley. She's a lady who's been the lone voice in this Church of England debacle scandal. She was the one calling for Justin Welby to resign. She's now calling for a guy called Stephen Cottrell to resign, who was going to be the stand-in for Justin Welby because he didn't take action over another sex abuse case. So this is this brave woman who was, I mean, now it's OK because the thing is happening, but she took a stand, but it could have been very dangerous.
OK, go on, Benjamin.
Well, my Greatest Britain is the former terrorist...
Stop it.
OK, go on.
Messed up. Stop
No, mine is the winner of Strictly Come Dancing, Chris McCausland.
That would have been mine as well.
At the very first week of this year's Strictly, he was also my Greatest Britain, and he didn't win. And I'm hoping he's proven himself to you. The way that, I mean, he was a good dancer, a great dancer, but the way that he never complained...
He's blind for context.
Yeah, sorry, he is blind for anyone that didn't watch it. And to win that contest, to become such a great dancer, and his partner Diane Buswell to teach him, it was genuinely inspiring. And there were so many questions about Strictly this year, and I think it was a brilliant series. It really found the fun again, and I think the BBC should be proud.
He was a very funny guy, and he connected with the people who watched the show, which I thought was great.
Good. Yeah. Go on, Sam.
Hilary Cass, who continues to fight in the name of science and fact in the whole row about puberty blockers. Wes Streeton, the Health Secretary, last week said he was going to ban puberty blockers. Various MPs from Labour and the Green Party then said that this was transphobic. Okay. She goes out there and puts out the science and the facts.
OK, lovely. So the winner... is your guy
Chris McCausland.
Chris McCausland, yeah, that one. OK, well done, well done. Right, I know your Union Jackass is Islamist pub man.
I won't say his name, but this is a convicted terrorist, jailed for 4 years. Anyway, he got anxious and terrorised apparently by seeing a sign called Sarahson's head. Stop winding me on. But it's funny how he's not going to be upset if he gets £1,850 from the small claims.
Very quickly.
My Union Jackass is Prince Andrew, a man usually of such good judgment. judgment seems so thick.
Fair enough. Go on.
Church of England, they're obsessed with reparations, they're anti-Rwanda deportations, but cannot root out sex abuse even when it actually is presented to them on a plate in documentary form. They still ignore it.
You know what? Honestly, I could very legitimately go for all of those, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Well done, everybody.
Oh, good luck.
There we go.
Christmas
right,
treat.
coming up next, it's Headliners, presented tonight by Simon Evans. Simon, what's on your show?
Hello, Patrick. Well, we've got all the news you've been covering, of course. The front pages are largely seen to be featuring Prince Andrew and the ongoing row about Chinese diplomacy. We have the nonsense about the Sarahson's head and whether it is a new form of Islamophobia is going to sweep the nation. Nigel Farage's two-tier policing, his milkshake has not been treated adequately by the courts, and the proof that we are all descended from cannibals.
From what?
Cannibals.
I thought you said camels. Okay.
Three wise men.
We might be as well. Thank you very much, Simon. It's going to be a great show. Keep it GBNews. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And most importantly, thank you to everyone who's been watching and listening. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 p.m.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Whilst it is going to stay mild for many of us as we go into tomorrow, there will be some wet and windy weather to come. That's because there is currently a system waiting out in the Atlantic, but ahead of this, we do currently have a front that's been lingering across some parts of northern Scotland and has already brought a fair amount of rain. That rain is going to ease as we go through tonight and into tomorrow morning. Otherwise, across other parts of the country, largely dry. Quite a bit of cloud coming in from the west, but some clear skies towards eastern parts in particular. And that cloud will do two things. Could bring some hill fog to parts of the south, and also it means our temperatures aren't going to drop. So it is going to be a mild and blustery start to the day for some of us tomorrow. As we go through tomorrow morning, then yes, quite a dry start across many parts of central southern England and Wales. A few spots of rain where the clouds thick enough, and like I said, could be a bit murky, some hill fog to watch